activism started during his teenage years, having been influenced by his late dad. He cut his political teeth with the Bayview Flat Residents Association as an activist and later the ANC. He served as ANC ward councillor for Ward 69 in the eThekwini municipality before taking up a role in the city as a grant in aid manager. Mr. Pillay graduated from KZN with a master's in public administration. The topic of his master's research was an exploration of the eThekwini municipality indigent policy and its administration with a focus on the provision of basic services. Now we have a lot to talk about with this young gentleman, and we welcome him warmly to Salam Media, to Mid Morning Talk. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Assalamu alaikum. And thank you
Walaikum
very much
salam.
for having me this morning, Najma.
Yeah, you know what we've been doing, Dr. Pillay, is profiling, especially on this program, people who have really made, you have become successful in their fields. And I feel it's important then for us to recognize what you've done and perhaps gain some inspiration, and also sitting in the position that you are right now as a member of parliament for the ANC. It's a challenging time in the country. There'll be lots of other questions that come up. But of course, we want to know more about you. And it's good to know that we have people like yourself representing us in Parliament as well. So, firstly, tell us about your journey. Where did you grow up? And we know that your dad was your influence, but is there more to that?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I come from humble beginnings in the Bayview community of Chatsworth. I live in a council flat, still live here, by the way. I grew up in Bayview and went to Summerfield Primary School. And from Summerfield Primary School, I went on to Chatsworth Secondary School. And that's where I matriculated. Now, I think the important thing for me is that I was 17 when my brother died, and
Mm,
he was murdered in this very same community. And that
okay,
gave an inspiration to the work that started. But Dad was also very involved, a community person who was sort of working with the ANC back in the apartheid era undercover with an organization called Helping Hands as well. And yeah, that's what gave rise to the work that we started in this community. But I had I had the opportunity, sorry, of meeting the late Professor Fatima Mir. And I think that's
uh-huh,
where my life changed. Meeting Prof. Mir was where my life
right,
changed.
right. Well, that's so good to know, because fortunately, I also had the privilege of interviewing her years back, and of course, follow her as a woman that represents so much of not just the struggle, but who we are and where we belong, and her influence. So, what a great opportunity for you, and how nice to hear that she was one of your mentors, and that you influenced by her thinking. But I just want to go back to what you said about your late brother. It did, obviously, that was a huge trauma crisis in your lives. What changed for you then in terms of where you are today?
So I took that tragedy and turned it into triumph. We looked at
Right.
the fact that my brother was murdered. He was stabbed, and we're living in a community that had so many social ills. And there was a need to create change, but also be the change that you want to see created. And that's
Sure.
exactly what happened. We turned that around. But I must tell you that sadly, I've experienced another tragedy, and that was almost a month ago when an
Oh
older
dear.
brother of mine, um, yeah. And so this is like some 23 years later, and we're kind of going
Mm,
through the same thing. Um, but for me, I think what is important is that anyone who wants to be change will have to create change and be changed themselves before you're able to
mhm.
change anyone else. And I think that is where
Right.
it started, that I told myself, I live in a community that everybody looks down on. I went to not the best of schools. In fact, you would always be picked on because you came from the flats. And it was always seen as a poor community. And I refused to accept the stereotype. And I wanted to ride against
Excellent.
the current in the wind. And I wanted to be
Mhm.
different because I believe that there's good that can come out of anything.
Right.
And that's exactly how I've been able to live my life.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. That already gives us motivation. I mean, everyone, we have a tendency to complain a lot, which we can and we must because we have to hold government accountable in that sense. However,
Yeah,
I think in your personal spaces, in our personal spaces, we have to make that difference. And you are such
absolutely.
a perfect example of that, having grown up in that environment and fighting against the odds, I would think, because then again, we're looking at the level of education, as it were, and how is it
Yeah,
that we're speaking to Dr. Brandon Pillay today, who has a doctorate? He's an academic. So, I really like this in terms of, um, it's like that lotus flower
yeah.
analogy. It's exactly that.
So I always, always ponder on the fact that when you hear and you read of the story of Jesus, and I think that
Uh-huh.
just then there was that question about what good can come out of Jerusalem, what good can come out of Bethlehem, and then you had Jesus, and the same with every communities and prophets and leaders, that you find that they rise from a community and a background that was always somehow in pieces or broken, and it's how you are able to rise from your brokenness. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I must say that I don't use this title, doctor, because it's an honorary doctorate, but
Mm-hmm.
I have, and I'm already in my first year of a PhD academically, because I believe that
Excellent.
education is a key
Right.
to changing the world. And irrespective, I must tell you, Hajma, that I never had the finances to study. When I finished matric, I met Professor Mir and Professor Ashwin Desai, Ramesh Harcharan, and it was through them and the networks that I was able to get a bursary to study my first diploma in community development and political science. And that's where it stopped. I didn't have the money to pursue anything further and continue. And as I went along the years, I started to then be able to do this on my own by being able to pay for my studies, work part-time, pay for studies, until the point of where I got to do my honors, passed the honors, and then went on to do my masters and graduated with my masters from UKZN. So I believe that even with nothing, you are still able to excel academically. You just got to have the positive mindset and determination to be able to continue.
Absolutely. And belief in yourself and the right support around you, right? When
Absolutely.
we come back after this break, we speak to our very special guest. And it's interesting to know that you have an honorary doctorate. I'd like to talk about that. That recognition is very
Sure.
important.
Thank you.
Salam Media.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za. Over 33 million people have been affected by the devastating floods in Pakistan. Homes have been destroyed, crops have been swept away, and roads have been damaged. Families are mourning their loved ones while trying to survive these horrific conditions. Penny Appeal is on the ground now, delivering food, shelter, medical supplies and water to those in need. You can help save a life by donating today. Visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
There's no smell that takes me back to the comfort of my childhood than the smell of black seed oil being applied by my nanny. Now I'm using Tib black seed in my own home to soothe sniffles and coughs, to help with digestion and immunity, and of course, as part of my beauty routine. After all these years, I've come to appreciate the wisdom in finding comfort and shifa in trusted treatments like Tib black seed. You can find Tib black seed at all leading pharmacies or find out more at blackseed.co.za.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Dr. Pillay, I find that there's something common in what I've read about you. And the first thing that I saw in your introduction when I was given and I researched it, it's young member of parliament. Then I see he was the youngest leader in the position of chairman of the Bayview Flats residents. So that's even more motivating for us, because also we find that the people we've profiled on this segment of my program have all been young people like yourself. So tell us about this having to achieve this at such a young age.
So I started activism at the age of 17, and there was just no other way. I mean, that was it. That was I realized at that time that that's where I am going to be, and that's how I even continued in every different sphere of life, linked to the same thing, and that's community development. And even this honorary doctorate, I had no idea there was someone from South Africa that actually wrote to the Global Ambassadors International, and then motivated that I be awarded this honorary doctorate. And I had no idea. I mean, I just received that, and I was told that, they have pleasure in informing me that I have actually been awarded this honorary doctorate, and it's on the basis of my humanitarianism and the hours of voluntary service that have been given as an individual over my life. And that was the basis of it. It was actually the number of hours given voluntarily back to community. And that's what it was. And when I got to Parliament, I was still very young because I had not reached 40 then. I became the chairperson at 17. I was the youngest, in fact, all adults around me. But the one thing I think that was my strength is that there were strong women. There were strong women that were around this committee. And that is why I'm always an advocate for women's rights and an advocate for gender equality, because I believe that women are a big strength and they play a vital role in society.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about activism, obviously it was political activism at the time. But of course, you also speak of community development. It's all linked in some ways, but how would you describe this activism in you? I know eventually you're going into humanitarianism. In other words, just the service you've given as a person, as a citizen of this country. And of course, more so when you narrow it down to Chatsworth, where you lived and grew up, it says a lot more. So the activism around, because there could be, you spoke about your brother's loss, and we've got crime, of course. That's one of the other things. So
Mm.
just take us through that inspiration that you had to take on the
So,
role
so, so
of
while
this type of leadership. Sure.
so while it may be linked, Najma, um, I must say that it was not political.
Aha.
It was community activism. Um, Unlike others who may enter the political sphere and sector or political domain, I went the other way around. I started
Mm-hmm.
community activism in the Bayview area at the age of 17. I became the chairperson of the Bayview Flats Residents Association. I served in the
Mm-hmm.
policing forum. I served in youth leagues, youth formations, and many
Mm-hmm.
organizations before I even
Right.
contested an election. In fact, I still remember that I was much younger. I think it was in my 20s when I was approached to stand as an independent candidate. And at that point, I said, no, I actually feel that I'm too young to enter this frame of politics. And I declined. I didn't contest. And it was in 2011 when I was approached by the branch or the structure of the ANC within this ward that
Mm-hmm.
said, we need a candidate that is credible, and will you contest the local government elections? And I must tell you, it took a lot of soul searching and thinking, because I was not one that was wanting to cross that barrier, and lose my community activism to politics.
Right.
Um, and that's the reason why I found it hard to want to accept. But nevertheless, I did. And I must tell you that it was the first time that the ANC won this ward in Chatsworth.
Okay.
It was in
Interesting.
2011. I won
Mm-hmm.
that election, became a ward councillor, 35. I still remember it was my 35th birthday. It was actually, the
Mm-hmm.
election was on my birthday.
Oh,
And
that,
I had won that election. I'd won that election and then served. I must tell you, differently. And the reason I say differently is because I was one that was constantly in contact and communication with my electorate. So my constituency could have never said in those 5 years I was never able to reach my councillor. We
okay.
implemented things differently. Service delivery was at the top of the agenda. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I must say that even after that, people continue to say, but we really don't see this happening. But it's about, I also think it's about an individual. And, you don't just take on a task because it's a career path or it's a job that you're getting paid for. I think you got to have the passion. And
True.
if you have the passion, then you are able to maximize and develop and also be able to produce. So if you're passionate about something, then you get it done.
Right. There's a question that's come up from a listener. The question is, what changes, if any, have you seen in the Bayview area in the past few years since taking this prominent role?
Well, I have to say that I've seen the changes in the time of my reign as councillor.
Mm.
And there we go. I see some pictures. We started a cleanup
Yes.
campaign. It was called Keep My City Clean.
Mm-hmm.
We launched that. In fact, we launched the very first WhatsApp group and WhatsApp line for residents to be able to lodge complaints. And I see now the city has that. They've implemented it for both electricity and water. But the changes, holistically, I must be honest, people have moved uh, from having not paid for services to paying for services. You have electricity prepaid, so there's no more disconnections. The flats have been upgraded, and we are obviously expecting another upgrade before they take ownership. We've seen many young people become employed, become developed, become skilled. We have healthcare workers who provide home-based care. We have a holistic approach. There are many things that one was dealing with and had to implement. But particularly around youth development and youth empowerment, I think we've been able to get young people involved in many projects and programs. Sadly, we've lost some of that over the past few years for various reasons. But I also must admit that the levels of poverty have increased, particularly over the last 2 years with COVID and lockdown and unrest. And it becomes a little bit more challenging to deal with things the way you would deal with it. Resources and donor funding has become or reached an all-time low. And it becomes difficult to work as a non-profit organization in this day and age.
Right. So I think we could talk about that in terms of citizens taking the responsibility in some ways, and of course, then government playing their part. After the break, we speak to our very special guest, and of course, speak about his choice in Parliament now and why the ANC. After the break.
Sure.
Salam Media.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, which charity is best? He replied, a drink of water. Africa. Every day, 2 billion people wake up and have no access to water and sanitation. Sponsor a water well for 14,800 rand, a borehole in Afghanistan for 49,500 rand, or a borehole in Africa for 55,000 rand with Africa Muslims Agency. Give water as a means of sadaqah jariyah today. Call AMA on 011 834 8685 or donate online. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Injuran Boys College is an independent boarding and day school situated on the N1 highway in Polokwane in a picture-cure and tranquil farm-style setting. We encourage intellectual and emotional development through a holistic learning environment. We follow the NCS CAPS curriculum and house boys from grade 5 to 11. We also have a boarding facilities. Injuran College is a safe haven and a home away from home. We focus on building morals, ethics, and grooming our boys to become responsible citizens. We offer the opportunity to be awarded 75% sponsorship of boarding fees as well as discounts. It is registered with the Department of Education and Omalusi accredited. Our other schools include girls' boarding school in Zaneni and a boys' school in Palawura. For more information, contact us on 082-491-4043 or 078-452-6264. Follow us on Facebook or email us on polokwane@injurancolleges.co.za.
The only relationship that will never break your heart is your relationship with Allah. Join esteemed scholar Dr. Haifa Yunus this November as she shares her inspirational insights on reconnecting with Allah. Look out for events in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban. All proceeds go towards Islamic relief projects supporting orphans and vulnerable children. Reserve your seat today. Visit islamic-relief.org.za or call 0800 111 898.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
I'm Najma Kota with you on Mid Morning Talk, the Monday edition. My special guest in our profile interviews this morning is Mr. Brandon Pillay. He takes us through his prolific life as a politician and community justice activist. Now, it's really heartwarming and maybe even encouraging to have that political standing and the position you hold in Parliament equivalent or running parallel with your passion for community justice, and so it's like I said, encouraging. But why the ANC to start with? And that's not a controversial question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a
Yeah.
young person who is aware of my history, who's lived in a community that has been quite active, I know that the role that the ANC has played in democracy in our country, I know the role that the ANC has played to free all of us. And I think that as a young person growing up, particularly in student politics at SRC level at school, being part of the Helping Hands movement, living in the same community that the late Lenny Naidu was, and having seen the contributions made by the ANC, there was no other party that I would have joined when the decision was made to join a political party. And also Dad, like I said, he was involved, at that time it used to be called an LRC. It was the old term that they used for different structures. And he used to work very closely with the ANC back in the days when they were banned and as part of the underground movement. But I also have family that comes from a rich history of the ANC. The late Kirsten Munsami, that was in Robben Island. And I think all of that played a part. And then having met Professor Mir, because while she came to Chatsworth, on a different banner, I knew that she was still part of the ANC, and she was, but she was bold enough to stand up for the injustices. So I think, there was no other choice, and I would have chose any other way.
Mm-hmm. So, you won the award for Influential Man of the Year for 2019, and it says it recognizes leaders across different facets of society who excel in their field and portray great leadership. Now, again, it gives us some sense of hope in that we have people like yourself in Parliament. And I like that it's for excellence in leadership. So you're representing our leadership now in Parliament. What is your view on how we take the legacy of the ANC in the past to where it needs to go now? Because there is, of course, a lot of disappointment that the party has displayed, or some of the representatives of the party, or the leadership itself.
I have to agree, and why I say I have to agree is because the principles of the ANC, the policy of the ANC, and everything that the ANC stands for as a political party is what is and will be able to take the country forward, and should have been. But I also have to say that, unfortunately, you will find that individuals find a different way of how they interpret certain things and how they also carry out themselves. And I must say that as the political party or the movement, we tend to get a bad name because of individuals. And no doubt, we have to accept that because you're part of a collective, you are going to be labeled the same way. But I can
Mm-hmm.
assure you that not every person in any political party is the same, whether it's in an opposition party or whether it's in
Right.
the ANC. There are people who disagree with the way things are and how things are. And for me, to be able to live that legacy, what we have to do, and ultimately, it comes down to one thing. You got to go back to the basics. You got to be in touch with the people, and you got to deliver services. Basic services is ultimately what people of South Africa need. That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they need. There are times where South Africans are not asking for too much, but just being able to
Mm-hmm.
provide basic services even has become so difficult.
Absolutely. Right. So, how would you then advise us to hold the government accountable? I mean, we have an election
I think
process,
that's,
but right now, yeah.
but I think holding government accountable is one thing, but actually doing something about it would be, for me, the important thing. And I think communities and societies have been holding government accountable. And I say this because you look at the decline in the
Mm-hmm.
number of votes over the past few years. You look at the
Uh-huh.
voter apathy. For
True.
me, I think that is not going to solve the problem, because when you just stay away, it means that a lower voter turnout just means that you're going to end up like you do right now, with coalitions in municipalities that can't function because you have um, unstable municipalities, unstable councils, hung municipalities. And really, we are not ready as South Africa for a coalition and a coalition
Mm-hmm.
government, because we can see what is happening in municipalities. You can't pass budgets. But what I think needs to
Mm-hmm.
happen is that
Mm-hmm.
community needs to work together. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's the service delivery. Councillors need to be accountable at the level of wards. You can't just say, I
Right.
tried contacting the council and he hasn't responded, because really the electricity, water, grass cutting, street lighting, those things are local government. Those are municipal
Sure.
issues. You have a
Right.
councillor that you elected, and that councillor must be responsible for being the communication between the city and yourself. So for me, I think it
Got it.
starts there. Yes,
Yes.
you could I always say this: you use social media for everything, you use your WhatsApp groups, your Facebook, etc. But does it solve the problem? It doesn't. It
Mm.
doesn't, because it just creates this, but it doesn't solve the problem. And holding
Right.
local leaders accountable at a ward level, service delivery is key. That's where we need to start, holding them accountable for
Mm-hmm.
services.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Good. I agree with that. And that's why one needs to exercise one's right, democratic right, and speak up when you need to speak up. And don't expect the change to come from the top if you're not going to do anything about it from the bottom. So I do feel that we need to take that responsibility as well as citizens. Another question, Brendan: how far up the political ladder are you aiming to climb? Is running for presidency someday in the cards for you? And that's a listener. You see, we need honest humanitarian people up there.
I love that. I love that. But I have to tell you that, first and foremost, everything that I do in my life is guided by the Almighty, and I take guidance from Him, and it's where He would want to see me. Uh, I mean, there's only two places you can go from here. It's either deputy minister or minister, and then if you're ambitious enough to become president. But remember, becoming president means you must become the leader of the ANC, and becoming the leader of the ANC means that wards and branches across the country must then nominate you. And I don't want to enter that space or race right now. But yeah,
Okay.
I think the only other space that I could get to, or the next level, after being a member of parliament in the National Assembly, is either a deputy minister or minister. Well, okay, you could start off with a chair of committee and then up there. Yeah, but that's where I am, because I am in the highest office of the land, and I think, yeah, that's where I am. I would be guided
And
by where destiny allows me.
right. And what is your specific role as an MP?
So I
Which
belong to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. And there's twofold. One, you belong to portfolio committees where you would obviously provide oversight. And the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs provides oversight on home affairs, your Chapter 9 institutions, and government printing works. And then you also have constituency period. And my constituency is actually eThekwini region, but I specifically focus on the south. That's the wards in Chatsworth, Bluff, Wentworth, Lemontville, and below. It's 2 zones within eThekwini region. So you have constituency periods and you have, your portfolio committee work. Constituency period is everything. You would deal with almost every issue, in fact. What I've been doing is bringing the mobile unit trucks, that's the home affairs trucks, to the different areas and schools to provide the smart card application. Because I know the challenge that we face having to follow long queues and long lines. And just making it easy. Just make it easier for students to be able to actually apply for their smart card in their school or in their community. I've been doing that since I joined Parliament. During my constituency period, I've also been doing some work on gender-based violence, workshops, women empowerment and stuff. So it's been different. You know, every constituency period you have a theme. You'll be able to deal with that, but also walk-in. So daily there'll be challenges that people face. They can't reach officials. So I'd escalate that. Just be able to, in fact, I do more local government work than national government work, constituency. Like I said, you know, people, that's where the problems are. The problems are at a local government level. But interacting with all government departments, I think, is important. And just being able to represent them. So I also take queries from the public where they've had outstanding issues with home affairs, and directly escalate that to the Director General to be able to resolve. And there I have to give feedback to the committee on where these complaints are and whether it has been resolved.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. There's a question again from a listener. We'll answer that after the break. He or she is asking, with such great responsibility, how do you manage a work-life balance? We answer.
Should I answer that now?
No, I think there's a delay with the ad there. Fine.
This is Salam Media.
Sure. All right.
Online schooling? Why not? Kurtuba Online Academy is the leading global online Islamic school from grade R to matric, offering South African caps and international syllabus. And it doesn't stop there. We also offer online madrasa for every grade. For more information, visit www.kurtubaonline.co.za. Kurtuba Online Academy, the leading global online Islamic school.
Decades of war, devastating drought, and economic collapse have pushed the Afghan people to the edge of survival. 24 million need life-saving aid, and 5 million children are knocking on famine's door. The world cannot just watch as this terrible crisis unfolds. With your support, the Al-Imdad Foundation is delivering emergency relief to the Afghan people. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Over 33 million people have been affected by the devastating floods in Pakistan. Homes have been destroyed, crops have been swept away, and roads have been damaged. Families are mourning their loved ones while trying to survive these horrific conditions. Penny Appeal is on the ground now, delivering food, shelter, medical supplies, and water to those in need. You can help save a life by donating today. Visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
After 12, we speak to Dr. Farial Luha, unpacking the concept of health promotion in individuals and increasing control over your well-being. But right now, we have our profile interview with a very, very interesting special person, Brandon Pillay, a member of parliament. Someone before the break wanted to know, how do you maintain work-life balance?
Oh, that's a tough one, eh? Particularly when you're studying, I think it becomes more difficult. I've like I said, I am a PhD candidate at UKZN, not to complete my proposal to submit in time. But yeah, it's quite difficult. Mondays are constituency periods. Tuesday is committee, and then Tuesday to Thursday is the sitting of the National Assembly. Fortunately, the NA starts at 2 o'clock, so you have some time in the morning to do other stuff. And then very rarely we would have a sitting on a Friday. So I find the balance, I manage time, I must be honest. If I have to get things done, I get it done in the mornings, and then I use some of the weekends. But I think ultimately, Parliament has taught me discipline. If it starts at 2 o'clock, the chair, you have to be in the chamber. The speaker enters and the sitting starts at 2 o'clock. There is no 1 minute past 2. So that's one thing that I've been able to learn, and to be able to keep to time, particularly because it has really taught discipline.
Right. What advice would you give to South Africans? We always say young South Africans, them too, but this time let's just go forward with the apathy, the despondency, there's so much of uncertainty with where the country is headed. How do we feel better about where we are at?
I think it's something I said many years ago, and I'll continue to say it because it's one of the things that we forget, that every one of us, before we go to our jobs, our roles, or tasks, we belong to a community. Just like you would come from a community, and no matter where you go, you still go back to that community. So when you finish your day job as a member of parliament, I still come back to Bayview, Chatsworth. When you finish your job, you still go back to your community. And I think for me, it's been ultimately the way that I would want or see how any individual should identify themselves as being part of a community. And if you are part of a community, then you must be willing to be able to be part of that community in the true sense of not just living there, but being a part of it and creating change. And you got to give back to that community before you give back to anything else. And that's why I have a problem with young people who move from Durban to Joburg after living their whole lives here. Okay, some of them move for various reasons. Some are for better prospects and greener pastures. But I always believe in giving back to where you come from, because that's where you go to. So wherever the role is, whether you're a teacher, doctor, lawyer, you come back to a community. And I think that's where you need to get involved we also need to get back to that spirit of community and oneness, the spirit of Ubuntu, where we care about each other, and we shouldn't be walking past my neighbor and seeing her gate open and saying it's okay, somebody else will tell them. But what about just stopping and saying your gate's open? Or, the one thing I really have a pet hate, and that's somebody throwing litter. So I would stop and tell you, it's not right for you to do that. And I think that every person has the right to do that and a responsibility to do that. If you won't throw it in your house and outside your house, why throw it in another area? And I would say that to anyone.
Yeah.
So it's the simple things that you can do, but also getting involved. I think one of the biggest challenges we face as South Africans right now is safety and security.
Yes.
Communities. And I think that's important, because are we waiting for other people to do it? Are we waiting for other police forums, patrol groups, patrollers, or neighborhood watchers? Or can we not lend a hand collectively to be able to do something? And I still believe that we have a sense of community that we can be able to overcome anything. And if we do it together, we can be able to see the change we want to see.
Right, right. So it starts with the individual, where some things are just not in our control either, like the electricity woes that we have right now. But that too needs to be, I suppose you're saying adapted, yeah? And
but that's out of our reach as community. The electricity one is out of our reach as community, because that needs an overhaul of ESCOM. And I think we that's a serious problem that we are starting to address and have started to address. And I think every week there is an update to the caucus of parliament to be able to see what are the ways in which we overcome this, because that and the fuel prices, I think, is one of the biggest challenges South Africans face daily, and we must be able to put an end to it, and we have the ability to put an end to it.
Right. That's what's important. And that's what we need to hear. Because, if you feel there's nothing being done about it, that's when people start questioning, becoming angry, etc. Just one more thing before we end the interview. In your master's thesis topic is quite interesting. And you again, because you love where you come from, it's about the eThekwini municipality and the indigent policy and its administration with a focus on the provision of basic services. So again, when one prepares something as rich as that and is then documented, how much of it is actually applied?
I must tell you that when I started off my master's, the municipality did not have a consolidated indigent policy. And by the time I finished it, they had adopted an indigent policy, and I think that for me was the highlight of my thesis. The reason I set out to do that research was to show that you have a policy within the different units. Electricity has its own free basic electricity and prepaid. Water has its own policy on water debt relief. And rates has their own policy on rates rebate. But there was no one single package policy that was dealing with indigent people. And by the time I had finished my research and published, they had actually adopted an indigent policy at council level and started an implementation. One of the recommendations that I made was that the city should actually have an indigent office. They also needed to update the indigent register. And I see that they are slowly beginning to implement around the indigent policy. In fact, they have recently rolled out what is called the 1820. It's an 80-20 where you are able to purchase electricity. 80% goes towards your consumption, 20% goes towards your arrears. And that's a way that's affordable, because people can still be able to have services. So you can still have electricity while you have arrears. And yeah, I actually feel that they've been able to implement a lot of what is in that master's research. And that for me was, I think, I achieved, because that's what I set out to say. You need to have a consolidated policy around indigency. And you also cannot be a city that's the most caring and livable and not care about its poor. So you had to have pro-poor policies.
Sure. Right, right. Well, that speaks to the type of person you are, and going further into the field of humanitarianism through your doctorate study. So we wish you all the best in your future in terms of your profession right now, and of course your studies and the contribution it would make to the country and humanity at large. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning, Brandon Pillay.
Thank you, Najma, and you were an amazing host. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this interview. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. All right. So we are going to take a quick break again and looking forward to our wellness segment.